at that point, something just broke in me. I just remember thinking, okay, that's it. That's it. So it's broken now. I can't do it anymore. So I asked everybody upstairs to the dressing room, and I said, okay, that's it for me. I'm going to support this record to the best of my ability. I'll go out, but I'm done. I'm not doing another record with him. I'm not doing anything else with that guy. I'm out.
What was that process like to determine the songwriting credits when the album came?
I got strong-armed.
Okay.
Because knowing the input that I had, I was adamant that I wanted to have the writing credits and the publishing shares reflect that.
The rumor about Templeman on that album was that he wasn't there a lot.
Yeah, there's no other way to say it. I mean, it's a miracle, frankly, that it got done at all. What are you going to do? You know, Ted, you're fired. Get out of here. We're going to hire somebody else. No, that's not going to happen. I think I said something like, you fucked me for the last time, and that was it. The man that I am now would have said, no. This is not happening again.
Are you done with Bulletboys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's just, there's some things you just can't overcome. That's the only way I can really be. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat anything, and I think most people appreciate that.
Hey, today I am pumped to welcome to the show Mick Sweda, who has had one of the more remarkable careers in music, from releasing 2 albums with King Kobra in the mid-'80s, to his time with the Bulletboys, and all the way to his current projects, the Hot Summers, who put out an album in 2022. And shit, he's currently playing with Ricky Rockett and the Rockett Mafia. Mick Sweda, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hey, man, it's great to have you on. I was just telling you before I came on, I was talking to Stevie Rochelle. He has, from Metal Sludge, he has great things to say about you. So I'm so excited that we finally got to make this happen.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and hi to everybody out there. Hope you enjoy.
So so you just had a show Friday night. Right now it is Monday, May 19th. You had a show Friday night with the Rockett Mafia. How was that?
It was really fun. I think it was a really stressful run up to it for Ricky, because he's part of this group called the Distinguished Gentleman Ride.
Yep, the Distinguished Gentleman Motorcycle. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not all that familiar, but it was a benefit, and they're trying to raise money to assist with mental health needs, which I think is a very necessary function right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, the setup was great. It was outside at the what's called the Ovation, which is basically a big plaza at Hollywood and Highland.
Yep.
And ended up being a lot of fun. We had a great time.
Awesome. And so I want to get into, but I need to say this at the beginning. So I didn't know much about your band, the Hot Summers, but I knew we were going to do this interview. So I'm like, I'm going to listen to it and I'm going to check it out. And if I didn't really like it, I wouldn't do this. I have been playing the shit out of this album, the Hot Summers. And if there is a song that is just screaming to be on radio right now, it's called "You Make Me BSC." You make me batshit crazy is what it is. It will not leave your brain. So I just
that's cool.
To acknowledge that it's amazing.
Right on. Well, thank you for listening. Yeah, we, Shane Tissart, the singer on that record, we put all those songs together, and it was kind of a project that we started with, the old drummer from Bulletboys.
Yep.
And that kind of went by the wayside, and we didn't do much with the record for a couple of years. And when we finally said, okay, screw it, let's put this together, let's finish it. It turned out, really well. We're really happy with it. Unfortunately, we're not marketers, and we're just musicians. And I'm from the school of, that's someone else's gig, including engineering and producing and mastering. And so we kind of took that all upon ourselves. And it'd be nice if more people heard it, because we think it's cool too.
Absolutely. Well, here's you marketing it right now, and us marketing. So get out there and go check out the Hot Summers fantastic album. So
awesome. Thank you, brother.
Oh yeah, no problem. So you were born in New York. Like when did you know like, hey, this music thing, this is what I want to do with my life.
Well, I remember riding with my dad and my uncle, and they were popping in 8 tracks, and what really struck me was back then it was called bubblegum pop.
Yep.
Guys like Tommy Rowe and Tommy James, everybody was named Tommy back then. Even like Bobby Sherman, and I'm 7, 8 years old at the time, so there's no stigma attached to listening to bubblegum pop.
Right.
But that just kind of evolved, and my grandmother owned what was called Sweda's Grill at the time, and I used to crawl around on the floor and pick up all the loose change and that they dropped, and it would go to the jukebox and play all these amazing songs from that era. And again, it's we're talking about late '60s, and I knew something was affecting me. Something was resonating very deep within me because that's all I wanted to do was to
Yeah.
stay at that jukebox and listen to these tunes. And around that same time, I mean, it was a different time and place then, and obviously I was kind of on my own and wandering around at the town, and I went by this billiard hall, and it was kind of spooky, and for a kid my age, like I didn't belong in there at all. Everybody was a lot older and a lot rougher, and I went in there and heard Misty Mountain Hop. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I listened to that, and I was frozen with awe because it was just I felt like I was doing something wrong listening to it, and that has stuck with me.
Yeah.
Like when I bought my first Iggy Pop album, Raw Power, I thought, man, I don't know if should I be doing this? And that's the kind of stuff that just sticks with you for the rest of your life. And I've
Sure.
always held on to those, cherished those memories.
So when did you first get a guitar, and how did like you get a guitar, and then when did you start getting into bands?
Yeah, I wanted to be a hockey player. So when I was 14, 15, I was just concentrating on, skating as much as I could and trying and just having fun playing hockey. And uh, I was going off to my job at the time. And I was walking by this house, and there was a new kid in town, and he was sitting on his porch playing an old Telecaster thin line. Well, everything was old back then.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not normally this kind of person, but I just walked right up and I said, "Hey, man, nice to meet you. Wow, you're playing guitar. You can do that? Like, guys can actually get a guitar and just start playing it?"
Yeah.
And it was on after that. I went out and bought a guitar as quickly as I could. I convinced a couple of my friends to get a bass and some drums. And I got that kid to join our band, and we just got together, plugged into one amp, and just started playing 25 or 6 to 4 over and over again with one finger.
Right. So your parents were pretty supportive.
I don't think my mom liked it when I had to lift my feet so she could vacuum as I was practicing.
Yeah.
I remember that being,
Right.
not necessarily a support system, but they didn't, let's put it this way, they didn't discourage me in any
Sure.
way. I mean, nobody in my family was musical at all. So I was kind of on my own. And I think the fact that it kept me out of their hair much of the time was probably the upside.
Sure. I know you ended up moving to LA. Where is that when the full on I'm going to try to do music as a career, is that when that began, or were you actually like in bands and stuff in New York before the move to LA? And maybe you can clarify.
Yeah. I had pretty much settled on what I wanted to do in high school. Frankly, we were playing school dances and playing the occasional bar, even though we were underage. And I went through probably 3 or 4 different bands. And right before a couple of us packed up and moved to LA, my band, the Pedestrians, was doing pretty well. We were playing in, the Jamestown, New York area, Western New York, and I had actually been in a cover band that went up and down the coast a couple times, and some other. I was actually in a Janis Joplin tribute for a while,
Oh
and of
wow.
course, all of those were, designed to make me come home broke and pissed off. But yeah, things are going pretty well, and we thought, wow, maybe we have a chance. So we thought we'd take the Pedestrians and move out to California. Unfortunately, only two of us made it out there, and by the time we got out there, we went our separate ways musically, and I just started the sojourn all over again, band to band, and finally got somewhere.
So that somewhere is that you were in a band that called Stormtrooper that put out an EP. So
Yeah.
is that the band where you're like, okay, I'm finally starting to get somewhere?
Not really, because there wasn't a lot of cohesion with that
Sure.
band. In
Okay.
fact, it was the other guitar player and I don't think we really had much in common.
Sure.
And I think there was some other drama going on. I don't think we ever played a gig. I think we just recorded that demo.
Okay.
And I left the band shortly after. I don't think much was happening with it.
Sure.
But as it turns out, people are always contacting me like, wow, man, can you get the tapes? Do you know the guys? Can you do this? Can you get me this? I don't know anything about it anymore.
Right.
But yeah, I guess it's a fun listen. I've
Sure.
heard it a couple of times here and there.
Sure.
But at that point in my life in LA, I was ready to move back east and call it a day because I was playing in, I don't know, 3 different bands and none of them were playing out and nothing was happening and I didn't know how to make it happen. So I was ready to go play covers in Maryland.
Right. So is that when Carmine and is that when Carmine finds you and the beginnings of you getting into King Kobra? Can you go
Yeah.
into how that got started?
Well, I was making a pretty good living playing covers, and realized that if I was going to do anything out here, I was going to have to stop doing that and devote my time to writing and
Yep.
playing original music. So, in order to do that, I got a job at Tower Records, and one day Carmine's manager came in. I guess they were looking for a bass player at the time, and I said, "Yeah, I'm a guitar player. Oh, better luck next time." And so I guess shortly after that, they fired the other guitar player that they had, and that's when Carmine came in. And I guess I made a good impression, and I got the audition.
And Carmine Appice, that guy's a legend. Played with Vanilla Fudge, Rod Stewart. I mean, that guy has done everything. So that's got to be like, you got to be thinking, I'm on my way now, right?
Well, it was exciting. To be honest with you, I wasn't a huge ardent fan of Carmine's. I didn't
Sure.
know much about his career.
Sure.
The Jeff Beck that I loved, Carmine didn't play on those records.
Okay.
I kind of liked, Blow by Blow and Wired. And so I didn't know that much about Carmine.
Okay.
But what I found out very rapidly is that he's a really sweet cat,
Yeah.
really nice to me, very complimentary. He loved the way I played and the way I fit in with the band. And all of those guys in that band made it very easy for me, it was nerve wracking. I'll be honest with you. I'd never done anything like that before. And so the next thing I knew, we were in the studio making that record. And, I give those guys a lot of credit for just being nice cats all around.
Well, it's awesome that you say that because on Wednesday I'm talking to Carmine. So
Oh, right on.
yeah. So he's
Well,
going to be on.
there was some drama down the road,
Sure.
which we can get
Sure.
into as well. But, as far as I'm concerned, my days in King Cobra were, and everything was weighed against us. I mean, we were just, you know, paid guys, and not very well at the time, but
Right.
that was all part of the gig and I accepted it. And, it was, I'm proud of my time in that band.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were just kind of it's not like you started the band and built up a name on the clubs, right? I mean, you guys just kind of got together, started writing songs, and kind of got into label interest, right? It's not like you built it from the ground up. Am I correct in saying that?
You are. Although it should be noted that by the time I joined the band, all the songs were written.
Okay.
With the exception of one, and so I just did my parts. And
Sure.
and I was able to craft my own solos on a couple of the songs, and But for the most part, the songs were done, and we got into pre-production, and it was just part of me sort of bringing the final element.
Okay. So that album is called, the debut is called Ready to Strike. It came out in '85 on Capitol, and it, probably sold like 75,000 copies. At least that's from what I've seen online. But you guys got to tour with Kiss, Ted Nugent. So what was that like? I mean, going from a kid in New York playing in cover bands, and all of a sudden now you're touring with some of the biggest acts in the world.
Well, to be honest with you, it felt very natural. I mean, it felt like the culmination of everything that I'd worked for up to that time. And keep in mind, I've been playing guitar since I was 16 and slogging stuff around and trying to figure it all out. So by the time that came around, I was going on 10 years experience,
Right.
which
Right.
for a lot of guys, they make it a lot sooner than that or get there a lot sooner
Sure.
than that. Making it is, that's an odd thing to say.
Right.
I don't use that terminology, but so for me, it was like, great. Now I can do what I want to do. I can
Yep.
do what felt like I was destined to do. And so all that touring and all that hard work came very naturally and didn't, like they say, if you're doing what you love, it's not work.
Did you get to interact with Kiss at all at that point, or were they kind of like, hey, you're the opening act, you guys just keep your distance, or did you get to, hang out with those guys or talk with them?
No, I didn't at least. But that's not to say that they weren't friendly
Sure.
and open to chatting. I'm kind of an introvert, so I don't do
Okay.
that anyway, really.
Sure.
But I'd see them around every once in a while, and they were certainly nice to us. I don't recall
Sure.
them, governing our volume or anything like that. So
Sure.
as far as I'm concerned, it was a great tour, and those guys were really cool to us.
So now, okay, the first album, doesn't maybe do what the label wants it to do. So you're going in to record the second one, which becomes Thrill of a Lifetime, that comes out in '86. Do you have more input now? And I'm assuming that the record label maybe has a little bit more guidance as oh, to try to get you guys to maybe become a little more pop oriented. Can you kind of talk about the process going into the second King Kobra album?
Yeah, well, there's no way to candy coat it. I mean, we had to have singles.
Yeah.
This record had to do it, or we weren't going to be on the label anymore, and they made that perfectly clear. And it was just so happened to coincide with me feeling like I was coming into my own as a writer.
Yeah.
So I did end up contributing a lot more to that record.
Yeah.
Some people would say for better or worse, because I know Carmine, he kind of bounces around to the shiniest thing, and that's cool in some respects. And I remember driving up to meetings with Mark, and I don't know whose car we were in, but there was like a rap station on. And I hadn't really heard much of that before. I wasn't very familiar with it at all, but I could tell Mark was kind of grooving, and I was kind of buying it too. And I thought, well, and maybe I don't know when that Aerosmith collaboration came out.
That's
And
right
so
around
I'm not
86.
sure if that influenced what I was thinking at all, but I thought, yeah, maybe we could do like a hard rock, thing like that. So that's the kind of stuff that ended up on that. A lot of it ended up on that second record.
Sure. And you had Iron Eagle, which was, I mean, that was a pretty massive movie. You guys had the main theme song. You guys did a big video. Was First of all, the video is pretty crazy. Like, did you guys what did you guys feel about that treatment, the video treatment, and what that all went into that?
Well, I think based on the videos we did for the first record, or at least the Hunger video, I don't know,
Yep.
did we even do a second one? I don't think we did. Um, it wasn't really exciting for me.
Okay.
I was kind of worried about it because obviously they had taken our hair back. I
Right.
mean, we didn't cut it, but
Yep.
it was a definite risk, I think, is
Sure.
what I'd like to say. So I was hoping that the song would be huge and that the risk would be, worth whatever image issues, we had, because it raised a lot of questions. People are like, oh my God, did you guys cut your hair? Is that what you look like now? But, working with Lou Gossett was a really sweet guy. That was an interesting experience.
Yeah.
And it was fun making the video. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't a good time. Like I said, I knew it was a risk. I knew the song was a risk too, because I mean, that thing is just doused in keyboards,
Oh,
as
sure.
is a lot of that second record, which,
Yeah.
if I'm going to complain about that record, as I'm wont to do, I would say that a lot of the rock elements that I brought got kind of buried, in all that sweet keyboard lushness, and that wasn't really the plan. That record should have sounded a lot edgier, should have been heavier for that matter. So, that's just in the hands of the guys that are producing the record, and there wasn't really much I could do about it at that time. But you take note of it, like, hey man, at some point in my career, I'm gonna stand up and say no, 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 no.
So what was the touring like for that second King Kobra album?
It's hard to remember, to be
Oh, okay.
honest with you. So it probably wasn't that exceptional.
Sure.
Let's see, in '86, I don't even know who we went out with at that time. I don't think because the record didn't really get any legs under it. I don't think the offers were there. So
Sure.
if I'm remembering correctly, it was probably clubs and theaters, and I don't
Sure.
even remember who we might have opened for at that time.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and see if I can
No.
research that.
So you mentioned Marq Free was the singer on that album, and what a phenomenal singer. He went on to do a bunch of other projects, and I'm sure you get asked this all the time. But Marq Free became Marcy Free later on. Do you was there ever any did any oh, this cat's kind of different, there's some strange things going on in your interactions? And have you talked to Marcy Free in any recent times?
It's been a while. I kind
Sure.
of miss our connection.
Yep.
But in answer to your question, all I knew is that it seemed like he was struggling with something. And when I refer to he and Mark,
Yep.
obviously this is back when that's who he was.
Yep.
Um, I knew that there was something that he was having a hard time with. I didn't know what it was.
Sure.
Sometimes I thought he just didn't like me very much, but I don't think that was the case. He had, something firing within him that I didn't understand. And to be honest with you, I wish I'd reached out more, and I wish I'd been more of a safe place to talk, but I didn't know anything about that at the time,
Right.
and he sort of kept to himself in those moments. And yeah, I wish there was some way I could have, rendered some sort of solace. But he's fine. He's a big boy. He handled it, and he's,
Yeah.
even a big girl now.
Yeah. At what point, and I don't know the answer to this, but I know Marq Torien ended up joining King Kobra. When was that after the recording of Thrill of a Lifetime? What was that story?
I remember when we were at the producer's studio, and I'm not sure if we were working on that particular song, but he showed up with some guy wearing leg warmers and capizios and doing that whole thing. And I kind of thought, I didn't know anything about him at the time,
Yeah.
but he had long hair and looked like a rock guy,
Yeah.
at least to some extent. And that's where I first met him. And then when King Kobra started to fall apart, I think Johnny split, and then I think Mark split. Lonnie ended up coming into the band, and I'm not even sure how that happened, because I didn't know him at that time.
Okay.
Maybe there was an ad, maybe he just auditioned or knew somebody. I'm not sure. But Lonnie and Mark were very close friends.
Sure.
So when Mark left, Marq Torien or Marq Free left,
Yeah.
that was the connection with
Okay.
Lonnie.
So was Marq Torien, was he on one of the tours? Because he didn't sing on the second album, right?
Well, if you want to call going to Spain and playing a few shows
Okay,
a tour,
sure.
that's the first thing that happened. We got
Okay,
on a plane, and the next thing I knew, he was going back and forth with Carmine about wanting more money because, of
yeah,
course, if you want more money, that's when you do it, right? When you're
yeah,
on the way and you can't be kicked out.
right.
Um, so that was my first impression
Sure,
of him.
sure. So so what happened? Like how did it go down that you ended up leaving King Kobra? I mean, was there a big conversation? Did you talk to Carmine, or how did it come to an end for you?
Um, I really don't remember doing that. I mean, certainly it was amicable. I just decided that I didn't want to. I mean, because we had started to we did a couple of demos of Gene and Paul's songs. They had a couple of songs that they were probably shopping around to everybody,
Sure.
and we tracked them, and they ended up sounding good and everything. But that's not the direction I wanted to go. Carmine was willing to do pretty much whatever it took to probably get a check
Yeah.
and to keep this thing going in whatever capacity he could, and it just felt like it was floundering. So I made the decision to bail. I appealed to Mark and Lonnie to join me, and Dave as well, as a matter of fact, and they all declined, thinking that there was something just around the corner with King Kobra, and that was the biggest thing they had ever done. I totally got it. I mean, I didn't harbor any resentment or ill will towards them for that. So I went to my little apartment and started auditioning guys, and over the course of time, I think they all came around and said, "Hey, man, let's just get something going here." So it started then.
And that's the creation of Bulletboys. Is that 87, do you think? I don't know if you
Yeah, I
probably
think
hard to
it
remember.
probably was, if not late 86,
Okay.
87. And we played with Dave a couple of times, and I think he wasn't feeling it, so he bailed. And next thing it was us, the three of us, and a drummer that Mark knew,
Okay.
who ultimately didn't work out.
Okay. So what is that process? You guys, okay, you're together, you start Bulletboys. If I understand right, you didn't play live a lot. Did you just start writing songs, or what was your plan to make it happen for Bulletboys?
Well, I'm not sure. Uh, I'm not sure I had a plan,
Sure.
but I did enjoy the process of putting songs together, and they were sounding really good. And obviously, Mark was a great singer,
Yep.
so I knew if we had the right song that he could sell it. And so I think that was part of the thing that kept me, because I wasn't working. None of us had jobs. I was paying for gas on a credit card, and at that time, I lived an hour and a half away up in the mountains and would basically come into town and spend the week with those guys and then go home.
Yeah.
Um, so it was like a job, that
Yeah.
wasn't paying anything.
Right.
And, things continued to get better, and everybody seemed to be able to hold their issues, together. And it seemed like there was an end game somewhere down the road. But at that time, we were just getting together in Lonnie's garage and pounding it out.
What was that songwriting process like? Did you guys collaborate? Did you just each bring in your individual ideas? And I'm going to get to something later because there's some controversy about songwriting credit.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, we can get right to the heart of it. Like
Sure.
"Smooth Up in You," for example. Lonnie had that opening verse figure, that the bass part. He said,
Yep.
"Hey, man, I think I've got something here."
Yep.
And Mark had lifted a line from one of his friends. The guy used to say, "I'll go smooth up in you," and Mark loved that. Thought it was really funny. So those two elements existed, but there wasn't anything else.
Okay.
There were no melodies, there were no lyrics, there wasn't a B section, there wasn't a chorus,
Okay.
and that's what I contributed. So I took those elements, and it happened a lot. Guys would come up with something that was, just a riff. F#9, another example. Mark had a riff, and I went to my mountain home and wrote a song around it. "Ode to Joe." same thing. He just had a little riff, and I created the song, and that's how a lot of that went.
Yep.
So, if it sounds like I'm taking credit for a lot of the writing, it's because I did a lot of it.
Okay. When the album came out, and so I probably should have looked this up, but how was the split? You get the album out, you're like, okay, hey, you did 60% of that song, you did. So how was the split? And did you feel like it was fair back then, or what was that process like to determine the songwriting credits when the album came?
I got strong armed
Okay.
because knowing the input that I had, I was adamant that I wanted to have the writing credits and the publishing shares reflect that.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the other three guys, for obvious reasons, disagreed with that, and the manager was ultimately the final vote because he thought that it would behoove us as a band to stay together to do that.
Yep.
Which, obviously, in retrospect, if that's what's going to keep your band together, then you got other problems, which ultimately ended up manifesting.
Sure.
So yeah, I rue that day. But you also think like, what would have happened? Would I have walked away?
Right.
Would the band never have happened? Would I have joined another band and done, not as well? I don't know. It's hard to say. So decisions. It's all the price of an education.
Did you just split everything evenly then, or is that how it ended
Yes.
up? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I got you. I think a lot of bands started that way and then started to realize like, hey, I might have made a mistake doing that. So
Yeah, I mean it's to me. I mean, I don't know how far back it goes. It'd be interesting to know if bands like from the '50s or from the '60s, if they actually shared that philosophy where everybody gets a cut no matter what, just for being in the room or whatever.
sure.
I don't know. It seems to me like that's something that might be a more recent development. I'm
Yep.
not sure. It'd be interesting to know.
Yeah. Um, so you guys create a demo that ends up getting you to Ted Templeman, who produced Van Halen, Doobie Brothers. Like, do you remember when that came about? Like, holy shit, Ted Templeman's in the picture, because I think he's the one who kind of leads you to getting signed. Is that correct?
Yes, in fact, he was. Columbia gave us, I think, $5,000 to do a demo, and we were lucky enough to do it with Garth Richardson, who I still love to death, even though he likes the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so we knocked that demo out, but we couldn't shop it anywhere else. They passed on us, but we couldn't shop it for another 30 days or something like that.
Sure.
So that time elapsed, and we ended up doing showcases for Geffen and a couple of other labels. And when I heard Ted was coming down from Warner Brothers, I got all excited because all I could think about was that label on the records, with the palm trees. And I just, for whatever reason, that just resonated with me. The label, the idea just sounded perfect.
Right.
And maybe we'll get into it later. I wasn't that big a fan of Ted's,
Right.
but at that time I didn't know who was going to produce the record. So
Sure.
he came down, we ran through our set, and as the story goes, he said, you guys just play. I'll raise my hand when I've heard enough." And he never raised his hand. And at the end, he said, "Let's make a record, boys."
Okay. So after that, is it like, okay, shit, come into the office and sign the contract? How long was that process until you were actually signed to Warner's and are ready to go record the album?
Well, that's a good question. It took a little bit. I'm trying to remember where we did pre-production. Oh, I know. I think we did it up in North Hollywood. Um, but things moved pretty quickly after
Sure.
that, to be honest. If that happened in early '88, we were in the studio in the first quarter, I think, of '88.
Okay.
And I think the record came out in September. So yeah,
Right.
things rolled along pretty quickly.
And I'll just, I mean, I've read a lot. The rumor about Templeman on that album was that he wasn't there a lot.
Yeah, there's no other way to say it. I mean, it's a miracle, frankly, that it got done at all. And I get it. He's a superstar producer, but by the time you're sitting in the studio, for the second or third week in a row where you're only getting a day or two in, and all that money is just going down the drain. I mean, we still haven't recouped on that record,
Right.
and it's just crazy. That was so antithetical to the way I like to do things and the way I work and my ethic, that it was a struggle. And what are you going to do? Ted, you're fired. Get
Right.
out of here. We were going to hire somebody else. No, that's not going to happen. And he's a really sweet guy, and you want to, you know, be sympathetic to whatever he's going through. And if there's helicopters following him to the studio and he can't make it, what are you going to do? Say, call him a liar? So yeah, that was tough for me. It was tough for me because there were a lot of days. What was the phrase? He used to say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do some pre-mixing."
Okay.
What the fuck is pre-mixing? I mean, just why don't we finish the song first?
And if he's not there, it's not like you guys can go, okay, we'll do this and we'll do that. You kind of just have to sit there, right? I mean, I'm assuming
Yeah,
you didn't
I
work
I
on the
mean
album.
I was familiar with the songs, and I'm not saying I could have done produce Mark's vocals any better.
Sure.
I certainly would have had him screaming over the tracks a lot less, but yeah, you're right. And in fact, there were a lot of overdubs. I'll never forget giving them my list of things that I wanted to hear in the mix, and none of that ever got done. So there were plenty of opportunities to get work done, but unfortunately, it didn't happen on that record. So
Was there a conscious decision? Because this album comes out in '88, and most of the bands that are blowing up at that time do so because of the big power ballad. And you guys didn't do that on the album. And was was there any pressure to do that? And or did you guys just decide, you know what, that's not the kind of band we are. We're not going to go out and write power ballads.
well, let me preface that by saying that I love Ted to death, and I don't mean to slag him. It's just, in a business relationship, you kind of expect that everybody's going to work toward, the same goal,
Yep.
in a fervent way.
Yep.
But having said that, Warner Brothers never pressured us in any way. I mean, they wanted us to be who we were, and I thought I was very proud of that. I mean, there was a point where they wanted us to jump over to Reprise. In fact, that was the first thing that came out of our meetings. Like, well, Reprise, we're revamping Reprise, and that I think that's going to be a better place for you because you'll get more attention. And I remember thinking, no, 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 I don't want to be associated with the Neil Youngs of the world, and that you know was probably the first time when things started rubbing the wrong way. But again, they were with us 100%, and we were able to stay on Warner Brothers, and they gave us everything we wanted, really. I mean, they provided tour support.
Yep.
They didn't want us to go out at first, and at that point the band was starting to, there were some fracks, some, I don't know what you'd say. I guess there was some friction going on,
Okay.
and we knew that we'd probably never stay together if we had to sit in LA for another 6 months before we went out. So they saw it our way then too.
Well, you guys, so Smooth Up In Ya comes out, and if I understand right, it had to get re-released. Like it didn't blow up right away. Is that true?
Yeah, it died. It died. They couldn't get legs under it, and the record was over.
Wow.
And we were struggling with what to do. And I think at that point, I'm not sure if we had the video already and it didn't connect with MTV,
Right.
or if we then did the video for whatever reason. When that video got to MTV, and whoever saw it said, okay, we're going to run this in heavy rotation. It kind of blew up. I mean, I'll never forget. I've told the story so many times, but we were going up to do a couple dates with Cheap Trick, and we had a couple of clubs to play. and I would just pretty much just stay in the dressing room and practice and just warm up for the show. And I didn't really step outside very much. So when we went out to get on stage, and I looked out the window, there were people around the block, and the place was packed. And I thought, wait a minute, are we opening for somebody? Like who's here that they would come to see? And it was that dramatic a change.
Really? I kind of hear some Cheap Trick in the Hot Summers. I don't know if that rings, or were you a big Cheap Trick fan?
A huge Cheap Trick fan, and
Okay,
so is Shane. So that was an inevitability.
sure.
In fact, I still don't know. They talk about moments where you're not sure if it was a dream or if it actually happened. But when I was a kid, I went up to a place called the Roadhouse, and this band was playing, and I'd never seen them before, never heard of them, but they came out and played "Hello There" and "Big Eyes" in a row from the In Color record.
Yep.
And I remember just sitting there in awe, going like, "Oh my God, what those guys are awe!" Because I thought they were original songs. I
Yeah.
thought, "Wow, these are my new favorite band right here."
Yeah.
And that night when I got home and I turned on the radio in Buffalo, they played that record,
Yeah.
and I heard those songs, being played by the original guys, and I just all I wanted to do at that time was go to Chicago and see Cheap Trick live, and I never got to do it
Right.
until we opened for them. But that was just it was on my mind all day, every day. I
Right.
just gotta see these guys someday.
Yeah.
It was
Um,
funny.
how many shows did you get to play for very long with Cheap Trick, or was it just a
Oh, it
couple?
was just 2 dates.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right. So you did end up on the Cinderella Winger tour, and I wanted to see that. You guys played great. I'm in Fargo, North Dakota. You guys played
Hmm.
Grand Forks, North Dakota, about an hour away. And for whatever reason, I couldn't go. But how did that tour, like, I mean, was it awesome? Did you get along with the other? What are your memories of that? If you could just briefly talk
Well,
about.
I got off to a rocky start because we did some club dates and had to fly into our first show with them in Kentucky. And somebody had the bright idea to go out and start sampling some tequila, and that ended up in a little stint in the local jail. So that we made the gig was very fortuitous for us, and it was it made for some nice talk in the lunchroom,
Sure.
but it was an inauspicious start to say the least. But once we got rolling, and once the guys got to know us, and once we sort of straightened out all the rough edges, that tour was a dream. It was
Sure.
great. We loved those guys, and they really appreciated us, and they let us do our thing. And a lot of nights we'd get up and play with them after their set.
Yeah.
So it was really cool.
When so the first album, as far as I know, it hasn't been certified platinum, and maybe it's reached that. But was like when you got done with the cycle for that debut album, was did you guys feel like, all right, or everything's going great, or was there a shit? I thought we'd go platinum. Like, could you kind of what was the mood of the band after that?
Well, I mean, certainly that was a disappointment. I mean, we'd watched Winger, and backstage, they'd all gather in their little, huddle and talk about, 1 million, 2 million, let's go for, and I remember seeing that and thinking, okay, we want to get there.
Yeah.
But clearly we never did. I mean, you can go back and talk about how SoundScan didn't really start
Yep.
until, I don't know, our record was already, months old. I don't know what difference that would have made. But when you're that close,
Yep.
I think the last number I heard was 800,000. You think to yourself, man, if we're not there now, we got to be damn near.
Sure. Sure.
So, yeah, it would have been nice to have that one, but who knows? Maybe someday.
The label was still pretty supportive though, right? I mean, at the end of that in preparation for the next album, or were they kind of like, guys, we need to do something different?
Well, the label was Ted, essentially,
Okay.
for us.
Okay.
So he was our direct conduit. We didn't really hear much from them. I think they were still open to supporting us financially, which again, that ends up killing you in the end. But I think that Ted didn't feel like he had the same singer. In fact, I know that's what he said. He said, "I don't feel like I've got the same singer that I had on the first record." Marq was not necessarily taking care of his voice, and you could tell that there were some struggles going on there, which obviously manifested itself in the record being pushed back a number of months and killed any momentum we had. I mean, I knew it too. In fact, I had scheduled a vacation to go back home, and the guys insisted that I cancel it so we could go in a studio and run down all the material we had written for the second record. And Ted pretty much rejected all of it. So we ended up starting over again in a very expensive studio, just writing away. And we formulated some tracks and did what we could without Marq there. He'd gone off to rehabilitate. So yeah, again, the same story, from the first record to the second record. Really, I mean, in a sense, the second record was a lot worse, obviously, because we were getting even less done over the course of that studio time.
Sure. When you say Marq had to go rehabilitate, can you clarify?
Well, I think he had ended up with nodes on his vocal cords, and that had to be addressed.
Sure.
And I'm not sure if there were any substance abuse issues. I mean, there was substance abuse, but I don't know if that's what he was dealing with at the time.
Sure.
I don't know. It didn't seem to help. Let's put it that way.
Sure. You don't seem like you would have been a major party, or maybe you were back then. Were you?
I was kind of a spectator, but I worried about my guys. In fact, there's a story that they tell. I don't really remember this, but the guys had a bindle and we went in the bathroom and, I did a little snort or whatever. And then I dumped it in the toilet.
Yeah.
Because I knew those guys were going to go off and it was going to be a bad scene. And there were some bad scenes, from like going on the road with Poison. Those guys were friends with CC, and, a bus ride with CC. You can only imagine what that entails.
Back then, yeah.
And so, I was in my own way trying to look out for those guys, but it really didn't help.
And so we're into Freak Show now. Freak Show comes out in 1991, and you kind of explained, because I was going to ask, why was there a 3-year wait? You kind of got into that. What is your view of grunge? And I'm sure people that were rock stars back then probably get asked this all the time, but when you saw it coming in, what was your view of it? Were you like, oh shit, this is not good? Or were you like, hey, here's something new and we can coexist? How did you see it?
Well, I was pretty sure we weren't going to coexist by a certain time. My impression of it was very visceral. I loved the rawness. I loved the energy. Certainly for some of it. I guess I'm thinking of Nirvana because there's a lot of that material. Like, I'm not an Alice in Chains fan.
Okay.
I don't appreciate the kind of dirgy aspect of it. But I thought, maybe there's a way. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we can go in a different direction, which is, I think, how the song "Mine" came about. I thought, well, obviously we're not going to go out and start sounding like a grunge band, whatever that means.
Right.
But maybe we can go in a direction that we're more familiar with, something that, came from within us over the course of our experiences.
Yep.
And I think that was the intention with what ended up being, well, I'm talking about the third record now,
Yep.
but the second record, we just wanted to be rude and sassy. And I think that is why we insisted on coming out with THC Groove, which radio was afraid to play. Some of the PDs talked about, tuning issues with the vocal and the content and the groove itself. I mean, we basically just said, fuck you. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Play it or don't. And they didn't.
When you got done with Freak Show, were you guys like, yes, this is how we wanted it to sound. This is the record we wanted to make.
Uh, it's it's a very it's closer in sonically to how I wanted the first record to sound.
Okay.
And certainly I was more comfortable with the guitar tones. Was I as comfortable with the material? I don't think so. I think we could have done better in some cases, but it was fun to play, and we worked hard on it, and I think that's what was in our hearts. I'll never forget this one guy. He was practically in tears. He's like, Mick, I love that first record so much. How could you do this? How could you come out with such a dark and foreboding record? And why, what happened to you guys? What happened? And he was kind of upsetting me. And I just said, dude, it's just somehow the experiences that we had, throughout the tour and in this industry, and you grow and you evolve, and sometimes you have to speak what your truth is, and I felt like that's what we did on that record.
How long were you guys out with Poison on that tour?
Uh, Man, maybe 3 months.
Okay.
I mean, it was a good run. I think it was in the summer, and we were doing sheds, and it was that was a fun run with those guys.
I mean, if I understand that tour must have done really well.
Yeah, I don't remember having any problems, with any of the venues we played, and certainly not with Cinderella. And that was the fun thing about that tour too, because people were coming out early. Usually as an opening act, everybody's running around buying T-shirts and getting their beers,
Yeah.
and people were in the seats for us, and that was a nice thing to see.
So I'll probably ask the same thing. Now the mood, like, is the band, are you guys doing okay? The second record doesn't, again, is now much less, doesn't go gold. How is the band doing, and how's your relationship with Templeman? Because Templeman does do you guys are still on Warner's, you do the third record with Templeman. What's it like at the end of Freak Show, the band?
It was becoming more and more fractious.
Okay.
And we weren't really hanging out. We weren't getting along. I was certainly having my problems with Marq.
Yep.
And he there was let's put it this way, there was a lot of damage control going on from day one, and it continued, and it just starts to wear on you. You start to become exhausted, you start to not give a damn about anything, and you just don't want to freaking fight anymore. And so by the time we started the third record, I wasn't really digging a lot of the things that we were coming up with.
Sure.
And it was evident that everybody felt like, as you progress in your career, you feel stronger, you feel more confident, and everybody was trying to contribute more, but it wasn't really coalescing as I had imagined it would. And at the point that we got all the tracks done, Ted wasn't really showing up very much. We were just kind of working with the engineer, although to Ted's credit, he was letting us do more with the engineer. But at one point, Ted said, "Look, you and Marq go in there, do the backgrounds, finish this up, get your guitars done, get your vocals done, and let's get this thing going here." And that didn't sit well with Lonnie or Jimmy, because they were pretty much forbidden to go to the studio. Okay. So that just added to the tension and the dissolution of the band, really.
Were session players playing their stuff?
No, it was all us.
Okay, like where you said they weren't allowed to come to this.
Well, once their tracks were done, once we got the drums, once we got the bass, all the rhythm tracks, and then Marq and I were just doing, the backgrounds, and I was doing extra overdubs.
I got you.
But yeah, it was a tough time, for everybody, because I felt like I was working harder on the record than even Ted was. And, there was talk of getting a production credit on it, which never ended up happening. Okay. So Yeah, and it's fun to listen to it now. I mean, I think there's enough time that has elapsed where I'm not really thinking of all the, I'm not associating like incidents with each song or
But
so. There's enough distance there that I recognize it as it's a pretty fun record now.
how were the, if you can go into this, we talked about the songwriting credits on the first one. Did you guys stick with we're just splitting them evenly on the following two albums, Freak Show and Zaza, or did that change? Did it become more, okay, this is the way it actually is?
No, it didn't change.
Okay. Okay.
It didn't change.
Okay. Do you kind of, and you probably in a way have answered that, but I'm assuming you kind of wish that you had been a little bit more, no, this is not right. I did this. I should get credit for this.
Yeah, the man that I am now would have
Yeah.
said, no, 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 this is not happening again.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Um, so on Zaza, you did release, shoot, the only single that you did was the ballad that was like the
Hmm.
first ballad. It was called
Yeah.
Fine. It was probably a little bit too late in the party to and you probably could have released Sergeant Pepper's in 1993 and it probably wasn't going to happen, right?
Yeah, it was an interesting time. But to Warner Brothers credit, again, they were trying to get legs under it, and they had their reps working it. And it was biting here and there.
Yeah,
But I didn't hold out a lot of hope for it. I mean, we obviously, to do something that dramatic is kind of a Hail Mary,
sure.
really, for us. And but, I know Mark was a big Steve Perry fan, and Journey was, kind of a benchmark for that kind of music. And
Yeah,
again, we thought, if we can just do something, if we can veer off of whatever track music is on right now,
yep,
rock music, if we can just go in a completely different direction, maybe we'll catch another demographic.
yep,
Maybe, some magic will happen.
sure.
And that was really the only chance we had. I mean, like I said, there was no way I was going to go all lo-fi and
Yeah.
write, songs that were commonly being heard at that time.
Did you get much for tour? Like, was there a big tour or what happened after Zaza?
We were in theaters and clubs at that point.
Sure.
I'm trying to remember if we even ended up opening for anybody. I don't think we did. I think we were just kind of on our own by the third record.
Okay. Um, I think it's a 2018 Sleaze Rocks interview. You're cited, you cited a 1993 incident at the Palace as the last straw for leaving Bulletboys. Marq Torien does something during sound check that, can you kind of go into that a little bit if you don't mind?
No, I don't mind. Yeah, we were trying to sound check, and people were obviously gathering. The other bands were gathering in the front. You could see their equipment and their guitars, and they're all sitting in the seats, watching us and waiting for us to finish. And Mark was late, and when he finally got there, he went into a rant that normally would be reserved for like the back of the bus,
Yeah,
um, and was doing it very, uh, ostentatiously. To be honest with you, I mean, it was really weird because he was preaching to these people who probably weren't really interested in hearing, all this negative commentary. And at that point, something just broke in me. I just remember thinking, okay, that's it. That's it. So it's broken now. I can't do it anymore. So I asked everybody upstairs to the dressing room, and I said, okay, that's it for me. I'm going to support this record to the best of my ability. I'll go out, but I'm done. I'm not doing another record with him. Not doing anything else with that guy. I'm out, and I just want to be free of that,
sure,
please.
sure.
Which ultimately ended up leading to me giving up my ownership of the name, my
Yeah,
whatever portion that was,
yep.
which is obviously another regret at this point. But I was so desperate to just get out of that situation that it didn't matter to me. So yeah, that's how it went down. I think Jimmy left shortly after that, and that was the end.
Was he like shitting on like your peers, people that would have been in kind of
Yes,
the same
that's
scene?
a great way to say it. That's
Yeah,
a great way to say it. And he was very bitter. very angry that our record, was where it was at.
Yep.
And Skid Row and Warrant and all those guys were, they were still keeping their heads above water.
Right.
And, I get it. I get the anger. I get the resentment, but you don't go on stage and make a fool of yourself like that.
Totally. What was the reaction of the other guys when you said, "That's it. I'll help support the record, but I'm out"?
I don't think there was an ounce of surprise.
Okay.
I think everybody felt the same way, but nobody had plans to do it. I didn't have plans to do anything. I just didn't want to continue, with that kind of abusive nature. So,
did it ever come to blows at all? I mean, I imagine being on a tour bus. I don't know how much, you mentioned partying. I got to imagine there's arguments and maybe, substances get involved. How was that like? Did it ever come to that?
yeah, it did with me and Marq. I want to say, unfortunately, nothing really came of it, but it's never good to resort to violence. But there's just triggers and things that can make you snap. And over the course of 6 years or whatever it was,
Yeah.
I mean, it just culminates in this thing inside you that has to get out at some point, and that's kind of what happened there.
Yep. Okay. And just on the name, did they have to did they, or whoever they is, Marq, did they have to buy out your portion, or how did it end up being that you gave
Yeah,
up?
Marq and Lonnie took the name, and again, I say this with the naivete just firmly displayed on my sleeve, assuming that they just write new material and create, Bulletboys point 2.0 or whatever. Unfortunately, it ended up, that they were just playing our old songs the entire time.
Sure.
But the idea was that they would take the name and move on, and I would just take my gear and be free of it all.
Okay.
And so I remember Jimmy and I sat down and signed an agreement that expressed that.
Okay. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, I mean, it was perfectly willing. I was willing to do it. I mean, that's the sort of desperation you feel when you're, in that situation.
Okay. So what did you end up? And I know you did some projects. There was a project with, I think, Jason Hook that ended up becoming joining Five Finger Death Punch. But can you just kind of briefly go into like what did you do for the rest of this is 93 that you leave. What did you do for the rest of the 90s before I know you ended up getting kind of back together with King Kobra later on in the mid 2000s?
Yeah, I shortly after that, I just wanted to go in a different direction. So my initial idea was to delve into ambient music. At the time, I was listening to what was then called the Wave in Los Angeles, and they now it's kind of soft, weird jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, they were playing things like Michael Hedges and Acoustic Alchemy and really cool sonically ambient records, but it was mostly acoustic. And I thought, wow, maybe that'd be something I'd like to do. And then I think I got bored with that. A friend of mine, she says I'm pretty. Oh God, what does she say? I'm very musically restless. So I then started looking for guys that could actually, play in a rock band and started writing some what my wife refers to as your 90s music. But I ended up meeting Jeremy, who was in Death Punch. He played with me, and then a friend of mine introduced me to Jason.
Okay.
So both of those guys were working with me, and we had a lockout and did a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of really great material. Nothing ever happened with it much. I mean, we went out and played a couple of times and won a battle of the bands and all that. But, again, I'm not a marketer. I'm not a manager. I'm not really even a go-getter. If I can avoid contact with people, sometimes I'll do my best. But that was a lot of fun. And I love those guys. And they contributed a lot to my getting through that period.
Sure.
And once that fell apart, it just kind of evolved into what was called Lollygag for a long time with Troy Patrick Farrell.
Yeah.
And again, with my buddy John, who just contacted me the other day, we did a lot of great work. We just basically, I had a studio and we just get in there and go at it. And it was a lot of fun. I still look back very fondly on those times, even though it wasn't commercially successful and
Yeah.
nothing really came of it. No, hardly anybody's ever going to hear of it. Although I think I did have a website with a lot of that material on it at one point.
Sure, sure. Is there like, because I know, shoot, I've been talking with like the president of FNA Records. I mean, there's labels out there who are, they're like, hey, they want to find the unreleased stuff from these old bands. I don't know, is there ever been any, have you ever thought about, hey, I'm gonna try to figure out a way to release some of this stuff?
It's really funny that, I mean, that just goes to show you, the kind of mind that I have, because we associated with a label at one point with the Hot Summers that does that.
Yeah.
And I just heard of another label that's looking for perhaps something that, that I might have stashed away. So yeah, that's a great point. I might have to put something together and see if that can be, well, let's see.
Okay, so King Kobra reemerges in 2010. Paul Shortino's on vocals. You got Carmine back on drums, and you come in on guitar, and you guys release a couple albums on Frontiers. King Kobra in 2011, King Kobra 2 in 2013. How does that reunion happen?
Well, after Dave, I don't think Dave was a part of this
Okay,
particular thing, and it's not what you're referring to, but Carmine asked me to come and play on something that he was doing with some other guys. And I think it was only because he wanted at least someone else to be from King Cobra.
sure.
So I just came in and played a few leads on
Okay,
whatever. I think it's called Hollywood Trash or something like that.
okay,
Throwaway record. But
sure.
years later, Dave contacted me and he said, "Hey man, I put some songs together and I'd love for you to play on them." And so he sent me a few tracks, and I think four of them per record, and I just did my thing on them, and yeah, ended up sounding really good.
I mean, you guys didn't go out and play,
No,
do
no,
anything?
I think we did a video shoot
Okay,
for one of the songs from the first one.
okay,
And yeah, that was it. I think we took a couple of pictures, and there might have been plans. I know Dave was really excited about going out to do that Sweden rock festival that those guys did, and
yeah,
it just didn't. The money didn't make any sense to
sure,
me,
sure.
so I passed on it. But yeah, I could tell Dave was a little disappointed that I didn't join him for that.
Sure, sure. In 2015, you form a band called Lies, Deceit, and Treachery, which is kind of from an old Bulletboys lyric. And you get the other three guys, you and Lonnie and Jimmy, uh, and do Bulletboys stuff. And it's kind of thought of as a shot against Mark. And it doesn't surprise me because Mark, I mean, has been cycling guys through Bullet Boys, and you just don't. I'll just be honest, you just don't hear a lot of. There was a recent Metal Sludge article. A guy, Ira Black, said that Mark stole his amp, and anyway, I do want to get into the attempted reunion, but can you tell me how did that lies, deceit, and treachery come together?
Well, as I referenced earlier, Shane and I had been working with Jimmy
Yeah,
on the Hot Summers.
yeah,
And Jimmy didn't, he felt like he needed to go in a different direction. So that ended up kind of blowing up in a really weird fashion. And the three of us just kind of went our separate ways for a while. And once the dust cleared from that, Shane and Jimmy got together and devised a plan to seduce me to come back and play with them again. And that plan involved doing a bunch of Cheap Trick covers,
yeah,
which I would never turn down in a million years.
yeah.
So they tricked me. We got in, we played some Cheap Trick songs, and then decided to resurrect the Bullet Boy stuff, which Shane was all over. I mean, he could sing that stuff up and down,
Yeah.
and he was a fan and loved it. And we got some legs under it, played a few gigs, and people really enjoyed it. I think we had a great time.
Okay. So then what happened with that?
Uh, great question. I don't know how that fizzled out.
Didn't you have Andrew Freeman was in for a little while?
Yeah, you know what? I'm sure
Okay.
that was probably the death knell.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, once that happened, it was probably only a matter of time, and it
Yeah.
just died.
Was there any communication with Mark over the years? I mean, it was. I'm assuming there might have been. Hey, would you like to come back and give it a shot again? And I'm talking about the late '90s through the early 2010s, or were you just kind of like, no, I'm done. That's my past.
I can't give you an exact year, but I was working with Jimmy.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know, 2009, 2010. I don't know. I could be way off, but we decided that we were going to meet with Mark at NAM and discuss the possibility of getting together again. The sticking point being that he, was going to hang on to the name, and that any reunion we would do would only result in him uh, jumping ship and taking advantage of whatever uh, rebuilding efforts we put into it. And so I knew that was going to be the case. And so when I confronted him at NAM about that, he was very reluctant. And you could tell he wasn't going to be all in. He wanted to maintain control of the name, and um, I wanted to do it for real. If we're going to get together, I mean, and we're going to, all be pain in the asses to each other. Let's make it worthwhile.
Sure.
So I just walked away, and it bummed Jimmy out. Jimmy's like, Mick, come on, we gotta try to work this out. I
Yeah.
said, no, he's not working anything out.
Right.
So that was one attempt, and then I don't know. I guess we got a good offer to play the Key Club or something, and I knew that he wasn't. Somebody was handling it, so I knew he wasn't going to be, taking everybody's money or whatever, shorting everybody, which he ultimately tried to do anyway. Um, so that gig ended up happening. I'm not sure what year that was. Maybe that was 2010.
Okay. Um, you guys did reunite in 2019, the original lineup.
Yep.
How did that come about? I'm assuming there must have been apprehension, and how did you just say, you know what? After all that shitty stuff that you did back in the day, how were you able to reconcile that and say, you know what? I'll give it one more shot.
Well, there was somebody who was responsible for putting all that together, and I suppose I put probably too much trust and faith in that guy. And there was excitement building within the promotion area too, and booking. So things were
Yeah.
coming together, and it looked like we had a pretty good line of sight at some cool summer shows.
Yeah.
So it looked promising. I thought everybody was on the same page with me in terms of managing the self-destructive powers within.
Yeah.
So I thought, yeah, why not? I mean, I'm not gonna get stung by this, hopefully, and we'll give it a shot. And people seem to be coming out and enjoying it. And I have fun playing with those guys. I mean, I've said it many times. Jimmy and Lonnie and I have chemistry that is very difficult to find. I don't think I've ever found it, to be honest with you. So that's an enticing feature in all of this.
Okay.
So yeah, why not? I wasn't really doing much of anything else at the time, so it seemed like a good idea.
That started in 2019, and the last planned show was in December of 2021. How many dates, how many shows do you think you guys played on that reunion?
There weren't that many, to be honest with you. It was the summer coming up that looked really good, like
Okay,
that following year.
sure.
Um,
And
so
COVID
yeah, it was
was in
real.
that year, so
Yeah, it was really unfortunate. 20, I guess it was 2021
right.
or whatever. Um, but yeah, I mean, COVID caused some problems. People getting sick caused some problems. So we didn't do as many as we could have.
Sure.
But ultimately, everything kind of went exactly as you would have expected.
So, And I've watched interviews and heard you talk about it. I'm sure you get tired of talking about it. I apologize for asking again, but it was December 16, 2021. You guys were supposed to play the whiskey, and it was that Lonnie was gonna miss the show that was gonna lead you guys to cancel that show. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And
Although we didn't know that till the day of the show. I mean,
on the day
at
of the show.
noon, I still didn't know if Lonnie was going to show up. I kind of expected him to, be here at any minute. And, we just had to come up with a cutoff point. Like
Sure.
at some point, you just have to say we're not going to be able to do it.
Did Lonnie ever did you talk to him after that? And did he say what happened?
I think I said something like you fucked me for the last time, and that was it.
Did he try to explain or try to
No, not a call, no explanation, no nothing. I mean, there was a point where we were talking about flights,
Yeah.
and he was worried that he was going to have to pay for his flight. And the last conversation we had about that was, okay, cool. Well, the band will cover it. It'll be all good.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so Lonnie's not gonna make it. And you guys decide that, well, we gotta cancel. If you had canceled, do you think would everything have been fine? Maybe you weren't gonna play with Lonnie again but what ends up happening is that Marq decides, nope, I'm gonna save the show and I'm gonna do a solo acoustic gig. And is that the final straw? And how did that conversation go where you guys are like, no, and he's like, fuck, whatever, fuck you, I'm gonna go play it.
Yeah. It went something like that. I said, that's not what we do. We're not an acoustic band. That's, as unfair as it is for people not to be able to see us, it's equally unfair for them to see us in a setting that doesn't work at all.
Right.
So yeah, we disagreed on that, and he decided to go down there and play the show. I think he was more interested in not losing that money,
Right.
which is standard.
Right. But I mean, if if he had agreed with you guys and said, you're right, we can't play this, he's not here. Do you think you guys would have been able to work something out and been able to continue on? Or
No, because Jimmy had it
okay.
at that point.
Yep.
So even though I was having conversations with him about, maybe trying to salvage something, because again, the following year looked pretty good and COVID was waning.
Yeah.
And, it looked like there might be a fun path. Jimmy was done at that point. He was willing to do the whiskey show, and I think he was out. So it was kind of moot that,
Okay.
Lonnie did whatever he did.
Okay. Have you talked to Lonnie or
I haven't talked to any of those guys
okay.
since.
Yep. Okay. All right. Did you hear that story that this guy says that Marq Torien stole his amp, and does that surprise you?
No, in fact, I was a part of it because Mark had said, "Hey, man, I got this amp. I want you to try." And I'm happy with my amps. I don't need another amp. And he was like, "No, man, really, I want you to check it out. Check it out. It's 5150." I'm like, "Okay, I'll check it out." It sounded fine. I didn't really use it for anything, but it sat here at my house in my studio for months. And then when we were trying to get a track together and it was falling apart, so he called me up and said, "Hey, man, I need to come get my amp." I said, "Well, you were nice enough to loan it. I'll take it to you, if you want." He goes, "No, man, I'm coming by. I'll get it." So he came and picked it up, and ostensibly to do something, but he went to try to replace guitar tracks that I had done. So that's what he was using that amp for. And I thought, okay, great. That's everything. Kind of fell apart after that, and I didn't hear anything for ever until Ira's girlfriend or partner sent me an email saying, "Hey, Mick, we need Ira's amp back." I don't have Ira's amp. Mark came and picked it up a long time ago. And that's when, all the machinations start to coalesce and you see what's going on there. He ended up taking the guy's amp, trying to pin it on me. And I don't know if he sold it or if the guy ever got it back or what, but that's just part and parcel of what you get.
Yeah. And I'll just ask this question now. Do you think there is no way you would ever, or like, are you done with Bulletboys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just, there's no, I mean, there's some things you just can't overcome.
Yep.
I mean, I consider myself a pretty forgiving guy. I know, what they say about grudges, it's like drinking poison and hope the other person will die. So I tried to battle that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's too bad. And it's a shame because, I'm sure there are going to be people who say like, wow, man, you bitch and moan a lot, don't you? Well, yeah, because it's my baby and I worked fucking hard on it. And I devoted a large portion of my life to getting there to that point.
Yeah.
And to have, such as I said before, self-destructive elements and to see it all just fall apart totally unnecessarily,
Right.
it rubs you the wrong way, and you would have to be there to understand, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of hopefully maybe on the bright side or to cheer up the conversation.
I know.
Your
Totally.
son, Easton Rockett Sweda, was born autistic, but ended up getting on a soap opera, General Hospital. Can you briefly tell me about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, as parents, that's an extremely proud moment. He had been doing some print and commercials, and
Sure.
he had a pretty cool little career going on. But we used to talk all the time about instead of an actor portraying someone who's autistic, why can't they write a part for an autistic kid?
Yeah.
And it was really like just kind of daydreaming and fantasizing about it. And when this part for General Hospital came up, it was just another audition because my wife and he they at that time were doing what they call self tapes. So you don't even go to an audition; you just perform it in your house. And my wife works really hard to set up the lighting and the camera and to get him to do his parts. And it's a pain in the ass, to be honest with you.
Sure.
And it also saves them money, right? Like they don't have to book a stage. They don't have to do anything really. You just sit there and watch what everybody does. So it kind of wears on people after a while. But anyway, getting back to the point of General Hospital, just another audition. Great, here we go. He'll never get it. Let's just send it out. Whatever. And they called him the next day. We love him. He's our guy. And it was just like, oh my God, are you kidding? It's fantastic. Wow. And of course, it was stressful. At that point, now my wife is like, oh my God, what are we getting into here? But he loves going there. He loves being on the show.
Right.
They love him. The fans are just frenetic over him.
Right.
And so it's really, for me as a dad, it's wonderful to see.
And how old is he now?
He's going to be 14 next month.
Okay. Well, congrats. I mean, that's an amazing story.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really proud of him.
Yeah. Sorry, I just had to let my dog in.
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay. So now what happens and it's weird that your son's middle name is Rockett and you end up joining Ricky Rockett in the Rockett Mafia anyway. I just thought that was kind of ironic. How did you end up joining up with Ricky Rockett?
Yeah, Ricky was in a salon with our Hot Summers bass player Brian,
Okay.
and I think Ricky was putting out feelers for players, and Brian's a bass player, and Ricky was like, oh wow, cool, why don't we get together and get something going?
Yeah.
And Ricky said, you know any guitar players? And Brian threw my name out there, and we went to meet Ricky, and it's been really fun ever since. I really like him, and he's a fun player, and the material is kind of what I had always talked about doing anyway, which is kind of a 70s vibe,
Sure.
So yeah, it's been a good time. We're getting it off the ground and get some legs under it here shortly, and it's a lot of fun.
you guys did, speaking of 70s, you did a remake of the Partridge Family, I Think I Love You, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything like, are you guys going to try to do more stuff or write
Yeah.
original stuff?
Yeah. In fact, there's a track I have here in the can right now. Ricky hasn't played on it yet, but hopefully that's something that'll come out and it'll be at least as much of a surprise as that. And I mean, that was a challenge. We both talked about, trying to do something a little different,
Sure,
if not a lot different.
sure.
And if you listen to that song, it's a pretty trippy event. So we
Yeah.
we just try to have fun with it.
Sure, sure. I interviewed Ricky a while back, and I don't know, something went haywire with that because that thing went over like 41,000 views, which, for interviews with, I don't know. But anyway, it was phenomenal, and he was such a good guy and seemed so unlike a rock star. And for that matter, I just want to let you know, you seem like the most un-rock star guy. So I know, and I mean that as a compliment. Like,
Yeah, it's not really my thing. I mean, I'm glad there are rock stars. I've never considered myself one of them. I feel like I'm just a rock guitar player, and that's kind of where I like it. But Ricky, yeah, he's the sweetest guy. Love his energy. He's always thinking of new things to do, and I kind of envy that part of him. He's that guy that I'm not, where he's
sure,
always got something brewing and something else is on his mind, and it's just a constant, like a windmill of ideas and thoughts, and it's really cool to be a part of that because I'm pretty simple in terms of
sure,
just wanting to be a rock guy.
sure. So is there more stuff coming from the Hot Summers? Is that something that you are still actively writing for, or does that have a future?
Yeah, we like to think so. Shane and I are the best of friends,
Okay,
and we, get together, and we're always trying to get together. I mean, things come up, and sometimes we're not able to, but we have one track in the can that that sounds really good. We really like it, and not sure when it's going to come out. We kind of, I'm kind of, I guess. Kind of slow at it.
sure,
I
sure.
like to make sure everything's to my liking, and it
Yep.
takes a little bit of time. But hopefully, sometime this year, we'll get something out.
Awesome, awesome. So what else? I mean, what do we have to expect from you in the future? Do you have any goals that you're like anything beyond the Rocket Mafia? I just kind of like, what are you hoping to do?
Well, I am really excited about putting together again, going back to the ambient idea. I love the whole post rock movement. So that's what I listen to a lot
Sure,
anymore.
sure.
It's instrumental, ambient, cinematic in a lot of
Okay,
ways. And I've got a bunch of tracks started that I want to get to, and that really of all my goals and aspirations, that's the one that I have the least time for, but the one
sure,
that I want to do the most. So
sure.
it's a bit of a contradiction, but hopefully when it comes out, everybody will dig it, and we'll see
Okay.
a new aspect.
Okay. And it seems like the new rage now is, hey, we're doing vinyl re-releases and all repackaging things and box sets. Does anybody ever talk to you about, hey, let's go back and put a box set together of the early Bulletboys albums, the ones on Warner's?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that yet, but I'm sure it's been discussed in other avenues. I know there are labels that have released that stuff, I think, especially overseas. Um, but yeah, I haven't heard anything about that yet. We'll see.
Okay. Do you have any social medias or anything that you want to promote that I can send people to, or are you very fairly active on social media at all?
I wouldn't say fairly active, but come say hi to me at Instagram, and I'm still on Facebook, at least for the time being.
Sure.
I'm pretty easy to reach at those places.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, come say hi. Love to
Okay.
chat.
Awesome. Mick Sweda from Bulletboys, from the Hot Summers, and currently playing with the Rockett Mafia. Man, it has been just an honor to go down and hear about your history, man.
Yeah, well, thank you for chatting. I know, sometimes people appreciate the details. Sometimes people think it may be a little too bloody and gory, but that's the only way I can really be. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat anything, and I think most people appreciate that.
I that's exact as in I I probably interviewed, I don't know, around 30 some people, and the best interviews are the ones where they don't just gloss over it and pretend everything was great. You were so open about the things that you went through, and honesty is the best policy. So I really appreciate everything that you said.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a ton of blowback. We'll see. We'll see the headlines.
Right, right. Hey, Mick, if you have any stuff going on in the future, you're always welcome back. But I'm rooting for you, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you, brother. I sure appreciate it, and have a great week.
All right, man. You take care.
Okay.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye bye.